go ahead and get started. Well, welcome to today's webinar on using SharePoint for client extranets and professional services firms. We're very excited to have you join us today. Our company is Premier Point Solutions, and I'm Jeff Cate, the founder and president. This is our 20th year in business, and we've been working in the SharePoint world since 2003. Joining me is Jonathan Horton, and he is one of our expert support engineers for our Extranet Collaboration Manager software, which we will be talking some about later in the presentation. Professional services firms do have some unique requirements when it comes to client collaboration. For instance, the need for the strictest levels of privacy and confidentiality is always top of mind. The client's information must never be disclosed in any way to anyone inside or outside the professional services firm that does not have the proper authority and a need to know. Any leakage of private or confidential client information by a firm could cost it thousands or even millions of dollars in lost business and or legal damages, not to mention the negative impact on the firm's reputation. Later in this webinar, we will talk about some of the unique security features of SharePoint and EXCM that make the platform particularly strong at ensuring that privacy and confidentiality are always maintained. Client work is always in a state of motion at professional services firms. New clients are coming into the firm at the same time some existing clients are leaving the firm. New projects for clients are starting as existing projects are being finished. So there is constantly a high level of churn in terms of the list of clients that are being serviced and the projects underway for each client. From a SharePoint Client Extranet perspective, one place the impact of the churn is really felt is the need to provision extranet sites and site collections and provision external user accounts, as well as the need to decommission them when they're no longer needed. Due to the volume of this churn, for many professional services firms, it's not feasible for SharePoint administrators to handle the workload manually by using the tools available in central administration or even with PowerShell scripts. An automated provisioning system is needed to keep up with the load. And it's not just the load of provisioning the sites and external users that is a problem. It's also the load of the record keeping and communication that needs to be done. At some point, the business will ask questions like, do we already have an extranet site for client A? And when was the extranet site for client B originally provisioned? And what is the history of permissions changes to the extranet site for client C? Without automation of the record keeping, it's almost impossible to efficiently answer these kinds of questions. We define external users as employees of the firm's clients or customers. In total, across all of the firm's clients, there can be hundreds or even thousands of external users that will need accounts and access to the appropriate extranet sites. And these users will have similar needs to the firm's internal users. They will need to be able to reset their passwords from time to time, establish security questions and answers, request that their accounts be re-enabled if they erroneously get locked out, update their contact information, and so forth. Most companies have all they can handle to maintain internal user Active Directory accounts, and it's not feasible for IT to take on the work of doing the same thing for external client user accounts. So just as with the extranet site provisioning, features and tools need to be provided to minimize the work required. This could come in the form of self-service capabilities or delegation capabilities or some combination of both. For instance, a system of managed delegation could be provided to allow routine account maintenance tasks to be handled by trusted internal or external business users. Finally, the ease of use and the ability to ensure that the firm's policies are followed are critical for a client extranet system. In the picture on this slide, we see a bicycle rider that has limited bicycling skills. He needs very easy to ride equipment, and he needs clearly defined lanes to stay within. Furthermore, competent oversight needs to be provided, in this case by a traffic cop. Likewise, in a client extranet, the tools that are provided for both internal users and external users need to be familiar and easy to use, given that these users are mostly going to be business people rather than technical people. Furthermore, the permissions and capabilities that are granted in the sites need to be locked down to only the minimum required for them to be able to collaborate effectively. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan and let him demonstrate a Client Extranet and point out how some of these features that I talked about can really help. Jonathan?
Well, thank you, Jeff. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that the software that we're going to show you can be kind of difficult to show in a 30-minute segment. So I'm going to try to introduce you to the scenario first by showing you the people that we're going to be discussing. So first of all, we have Brenda. We'll be using, in the scenario, the demo that we're going to be doing, we'll have Brenda walk through a new client being created and adding that new client. So Brenda's a paralegal with All Bikes and Associates. Another person that's going to be making an appearance is going to be an attorney for All Bikes and Associates, and his name is Alan, but he just has a little cameo, so he's not too important, but we just want to show you who he is first. The next we're going to have the client Wyeth will be the one that's being added, and Jim's going to be the representative for Wyeth, and we'll be adding him. And last but not least, another person we'll speak about is the SharePoint Admin for All Bikes and Associates. We just call him Admin. And we went to look for a picture for our admin, but our actual internal admin, this is the only picture we had for him in our AD, so we just used it. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about the software in stages. So the first stage is going to be, we're going to, as Brenda, we're going to log into our extranet that we have created. We'll walk through the process that Brenda will use to create, to request a new site collection to be created for the Wyeth customer. And then on stage 2, we're going to jump into kind of watching what the admin sees on the back end of things. So we'll take a look at this provisioning page that's part of our product. We'll kind of look at how you can configure the provisioning requests and how that works. Then we'll jump back into Brenda, looking at Brenda, and then let her complete the request process, and then also what Jim will see. So we'll go through the process of registering Jim so you can see what the end user will see as well. And then after we've completed the registration for Jim, we'll jump back in as an admin, and we'll kind of look at this Extranet management window and the different settings that you can create so that you can manage those Extranet users quite easily. Now let's jump over to my demo environment. Oop, wrong one. And we'll go with Brenda here. 1 second. There we go. So to start our demo off, we're going to log in as Brenda. And so this is Brenda. She's out browsing the internet. She has now received the customer. Jim has walked up, and so now she knows that she needs to go out and see if she needs to create a new extranet for this client. I will preface this with saying that the client and matter, for those of you who are in the law firm or the legal industries, you'll know that the matters are whenever a new client comes on and they have a matter, it's a case. So they've already been entered into the case management software, and then Brenda's just going to create the extranet site for them. So here you see the Extranet sign-in page. Typically, as an internal user, the user would not see the sign-in page, but in order to give you a demonstration, I wanted to make sure you see it. One of the things I want to try to show you throughout the entire demonstration is just how customizable this product is. So for example, this is our default sign-in page, but you can actually customize it so that if you want to add your logo, if you want to add some graphics, if you want to customize this so it looks like your product, we encourage that. On this form, you'll see that there is an email request code for our forms-based users. So you can either use email or text. This is our multi-factor authentication. So we do have multi-factor authentication built into the product. One thing you can do is once the FBA user logs in, they can request a code through email or text. There's also a forgot your password, so that the external users logging in They don't have to email your IT department to get them to reset their password. There is some password management options for them without having to bother your IT department. But let's go ahead and continue logging in as Brenda. So we click the sign in using Windows Authentication. You'll see that Brenda is logged in. When we first come to the Extranet site, Brenda can look down here at this Extranet site directory. She can see what sites that she has access to, different clients and whatnot. So she's gone through here. Wyatt is not one of her current Extranet site directories that she has available. So she knows that she needs to create a new site request. So she goes up to the site request link, and then she's going to be presented with some links here. So she reads over here, what does she need to do? She needs to create a new client in Matter, so all she does is clicks the link to create a new client in Matter. Now Brenda has come from multiple different law firms before, and most every one of the law firms she's ever had, she's always had to either email or fill out some type of form to create or to request a site collection be created. Maybe in your environment you have something very similar where they fill out a form. That form goes to your SharePoint admin. SharePoint admin goes and builds out a site. Maybe they run a PowerShell script. So nothing really new for Brenda here. She's going to give it a title. So she's going to name it Wyeth. Now we actually have a spot here called Client. And you can see that she knows it's required because there's an asterisk here. And one thing that we have is we have a product called TermSync, which is built in with this EXCM Professional that you're showing the scene here, so that the metadata for SharePoint is actually connected to external source of data. So whatever your client management software may be, if it's got a database of clients and matters, maybe you can tie that in with your SharePoint metadata, and whenever Brenda starts typing up the client's name, she'll actually see this list of clients that are already there that's been populated by your external source of data. So we'll go ahead and choose Wyeth. And then she's going to create a matter number, or type in the matter number for Wyeth. And here's Alan's cameo. Brenda knows that if anytime she creates a site, she needs to add the attorney Alan to this site. So she's simply going to type in Alan, and by adding him here, she's going to be adding him to that members group. So she'll click Finish. And if I scroll down here, we can see that there's an email that's come in, and Brenda has been sent an email letting her know that her request has been accepted. So she can click on the email, she can view the email as it comes up, but all she needs to really know is that whenever she clicked on the submit, that it actually came up and has accepted her request. So that's the first stage. Let's go ahead and, while we're waiting on that to get built, let's just flip back over to admin and kind of show you what's going on behind the scenes. So if you'll notice, there's this new client matter section right here. If I click this make request, you'll see that this is the same form that Brenda just filled out. So the link that she clicked on actually took her to this request form. As an admin, you can actually go in and make changes to this request form. So if you, let's say, well, actually, I'll just kind of show you what's going on here. Over to the right, we'll see that the request is still working. This is the request that Brenda typed in, so we can see that it is going on. It's still processing. You can see previous requests that have been done, maybe one that has been denied. So if you were to get a denial, you can actually click in here, and you can go into the details of the request, and then if you just scroll down through here, you'll see what stage the processing died on. You can see through here, it went through, it opened up the web application, it's created site collection, it's added users to groups, and then it's stopped on this one add site sponsor request. If I scroll down even further, there's an error message. This will help you kind of determine why it didn't complete. And in this situation, the group just hadn't been created correctly. So if we go back, I kind of want to show you real quick with this process here, how you go about creating that process. So if I go take a look at the execution settings for this request, you can see this is the form. So we're able to create a form just simply by adding fields and adding field groups and changing the orders. So that was the form that was filled out by Brenda. And then we had all these different activities. So there are roughly 70 activities that you can create. So if you want to open up a web application and create a top-level site with secondary site collection, add users to groups, or maybe you want to open up a list item. Here we have an admin links list that's being opened, and then we're adding links to it. So there are, like I said, over 70 different activities that you can go through. Let's say you wanted to add an activity. You simply click on the add an activity, and then we can change this activity type. So for example, let's just go ahead and add a list item. So like I said, there are 70 different activities that are possible. Set execution properties, open groups, install user solutions, a slew of different things you can do. We also have a free version of this software, and you can see over on the to the right side there, this part that creates the change requests, or that creates the site collection. There's a free portion of that. So if we go over here and click on Add List, oops, wrong button. And we just click this Add List item. Press OK, and then we can just simply fill out the form. So for example, the list, well, there's a formula button over here, and we kind of tried to make this as foolproof as possible. So the inputs here, this is anything that's inputted on the form. Well, the list was not on this form, so therefore there is nothing you can select. So you can't choose the wrong thing by accident. You actually have to choose the execution properties, and you'll see that there is a properties.admin list. So it does kind of help walk you through filling out this form. So you don't have to know everything. You don't have to know a lot of coding or anything. You can actually just go through and then you can add the list. Add list item title, that would just be the what do you want to call it in the column, and then you can enter your data. I'm not going to go ahead and add this now because I want to go back and show you the process that Brenda sees. So let's go back. And again, I know there's probably some questions on that, so if you have questions, go ahead and fill them in. This is a pretty large topic, and in the interest of making it into the time that we can all stand, we're going to go ahead and just abbreviate that. But any questions you have, we'll feel free to go back and look at those. So that's kind of the request process. Now we'll go back as Brenda. We'll see Brenda has received an email stating that the site has been successfully created. We'll open up that email, and then all we have to do is just click on the link, and Brenda's being taken to the site that was created. Some of the things I want to point out, you can see this is definitely using a profile, a template, if I got the right word. It's using a template. It was applied the color scheme that we wanted in the background. Remember when I talked about the admin links? You can see that this site was created with an admin links. Brenda can be just a member of the site, and then if she clicks on the admin links, she can come out here from the site collection, and she can request a new group to be added. She can request users to be added to a group. Maybe she needs to create a new matter for this client. She can click on this link to create the new matter. So you can see that and every one of these goes back to a request profile. So instead of these requests having to go to your SharePoint admin in order to create every one of these requests, your paralegal in this situation, which we call a site sponsor, can log in. She can make all the requests that she needs to straight from the site, never having to have anything more than a member's permission. Let's go back to the admin links. I'm sorry, go back to the home page here. And so now that the site has been created for Wyeth, she needs to invite Jim out in order so that Jim can have access to it. And again, this can be a scary part for SharePoint admin because you're introducing external users. We want to reassure you that this is a quite easy process and that your securities can be put in place so that they're not added to the wrong group. So Brenda knows all she has to do in order to get Jim to come out to the site is to invite users. And yes, that link was added whenever we added this product. So this product does use the invite users. It is using the same menu as SharePoint. so it's not a new user interface to get used to. Brenda simply comes out here, types in Jim's email address. Whoops. And .com. And one thing I want to point out to you is this site access. So, like I said, Brenda is not a SharePoint admin. She doesn't know a whole lot about what kind of user permissions or groups or anything like that. One thing she does know is that if Jim needs to be able to edit documents or upload documents, that he needs to be added to this members group. So she could simply check this box, and then when she clicks on save, it would add Jim to the members group. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll click save. And that's it for Brenda. Brenda has gone out there on her own as a paralegal, not as a site collection owner, not as a farm admin, but she has made a request for a new site collection to be created. She had the site created, and she has invited the user out to be added to it so that this user can now add groups, add to this site collection. So we're done with Brenda, so we'll go ahead and close this web browser. Close all tabs. And next thing we want to do is we want to show you the process that Jim will see. So now we're going to log in as Jim. So we're going to say we're Jim now. We'll click on this, imitate this email that Jim received. And here's the default email that was sent to Jim, letting him know that he's been sent access to register for the Wyeth site collection. Again, this is the default email. If you want to change the way it looks, if you want to add some pretty graphics to it, you're more than welcome to. So Jim comes over here and he's going to click the register link, but before I do, I want to point out this is a one-time use URL. So once Jim has registered with this link, if he forgets to delete the email, which none of our users ever forget to delete emails, but if he did and someone were to gain access to his email, they would not be able to gain access to your extranet site because this link has already been used once. We'll click the register link, and we should be presented with a registration form for Jim. You'll see that the email address is already pre-populated. There's no way that I can type over that. Whatever email address was sent the invitation has to be the email address that was sent out. Yet another form of security for you and your extranet. Jim will go ahead and type in a password. As you can see, there's a strength indicator to let him know if the password is strong enough in order to gain access. In this scenario, we're only using 6 characters, but if you want to change that, if you want to make it 8 characters, alphanumeric, you're more than welcome to do that. We'll go ahead and type in the same password, hopefully, and then we'll continue on with the registration. Next, we have a recovery question. As we said, we would like for your users, your end users especially, to be able to reset their own passwords and to kind of manage their own stuff. In order to do so, we'll go ahead and give them a couple of recovery questions. By default, the product ships with 3 different recovery questions. Again, this is customizable, so if you would like to change these questions, make them more strict or whatnot, you're more than welcome to. We'll just go ahead and choose one and type in a year here, and then we'll go ahead and continue with the login. So this is Jim, and his company is, of course, Wyatt. We'll capitalize that. And then job title, we'll just say he is manager. Now the next 2 are pretty important, so if you're using the multi-factor authentication option, you'll want to make sure if these are stressed that you have to fill these out correctly. The country, and we'll go ahead and say United States. The phone number, this needs to be, if you're using text messaging for the multi-factor authentication, this will need to be the text number or message capable of receiving text. So we'll go ahead and type one in here, and we'll click on finish. Once Jim has registered, he can continue out to log in, and then he could just log in here. So in the interest of time, I won't go any further, but Jim can log in, and then he has access to be able to start uploading documents, sharing whatever documents. In this way, email documents aren't being emailed back and forth. Any changes on documents are being recorded so that if you have versioning turned on, you can see who made the changes to what document at what time, and thus forth. So that's pretty much it for the end user experience. We walked through Brenda and how she created a site request, how she invited a user out, and then how that user was logged into or had registered for login to your extranet. So what kind of perks do you have as an admin? Well, we've already kind of walked you through some of the change bot, that being able to create extranet sites automatically. So one thing we showed you how to set up a request profile so that your user can just fill out a form and then click submit, and then they could have it created automatically without involving your IT department. One thing I will show you is that if your extranet and your intranet are on the same farm, you can actually go ahead and create intranet requests as well. But another important aspect of the change bot is the being able to go back and see the requests that were made. So as Jeff had mentioned previously, one of the important aspects of security is being able to keep track of what requests were made, who made the requests, what kind of whether it was a request for a new user being added to a group, or what kind of permissions were changed. You actually have a list where you can go through and you can see the different request profiles. Well, the next thing I want to show you though is if we go and take a look at the site that was created by Brenda by filling out the form. This is that Wyeth site that was created for Brenda. If we go out here, so one of the things that we did was we added Alan as a members group to the members group. So if we go out here and look at the peoples and groups, one thing I just want to verify is that the user was created in the members group. So there we see Alan was added to the members group. So we do know that that was created. And one thing I do want to show you though is if we look at the owners group, we see that Brenda has been added to the owners group. In your situation, maybe you don't want Brenda added to the owners group. Maybe you want her to just be a members. Well, that's a very easy change to make. All we simply do is go back out to that request profile and go to the execution settings once more. And we're going to scroll down to where the users were added to the owners group and what users were added to the owners group. Create owners group with permissions and membership. And we can see that whenever the sorry, that's the wrong owners group. Cancel that. Whenever the request was created, we simply said whomever is making the request, we want to add them to the members group. In order to change that, we can simply back that out. And let's say that we always wanted Alan to be the owner added to the owners group. You just simply type in the user here and click on save. And now as simple as that, we have made the change so that anytime the site request has been created, Alan's automatically added to the owners group. So let's go back to that site. And let's take a look at some of the extranet management of users. So as an admin, we go out to the site settings. And we'll scroll down. And as you can see, we've added this extranet management menu to the site settings options. So let's just kind of take a look through here to show you some of the features that you gain by adding this product. So if we go take a look at Extranet Users, we showed you how that you can invite a user out. One thing we also want to show you is that if you wanted to, you can come out here and you can create the user manually. So we just click on the new user and simply would fill out a form letting you know it's creating the user. So as an admin, you can also create a user without inviting the user. Most people do not do that way. They just simply rely on the invitations. But one thing you can do is, as you look at this users list, here again we provide you with this quick way of seeing, what's going on with your extranet. Who's being added, who's locked out right now, when was the last time someone changed the password, and that sort of thing. All right, so let's go back out. Site settings. And not only can you review what users have been added and what security groups they have, but you can also go back and take a look at all the different invitations and even registrations, and you can see, which users have been invited, who were they invited by, and just kind of get a quick breakdown of all the users that were invited. The invitation shows you all the invitations, whereas the registrations will show you everyone who has registered for the site. So you can go through and not only see who's being invited, but who's actually registered and what type of registrations they have. Now let's say, for example, that we wanted to create a new site sponsor. And by that I mean, Brenda, we've assigned Brenda to be able to send out invitations to be able to manage those users, so that if Jim were to walk back into the office and sit down with Brenda, Brenda can come up there and say, hey, you've lost your password? Well, that's okay. We'll go out there and recreate that. So if you wanted to create a new site sponsor manually, you can simply come out here, click on New Site Sponsor, and then we can go through the process of setting up a user. So Jim, and we can see that Jim is showing up in the People Picker. So even though he's an external user, he's not in our AD database, he's actually in a SQL database, he is showing up in the People Picker. So we start typing and his name come up. Associative security definition. So what this is any person that Jim invites will automatically be added to whatever security group I add in here. So let's say that we know that Jim, who works for Wyeth, will only be inviting people to the Wyeth security group. Well, we could actually, find the security group for Wyeth and include that, so that Jim never has to know anything about security groups or anything of the such. All Jim has to know is that he needs to invite a user, types in an email address and hits send, and then through our product, it'll automatically get added to the right security definition. So you never have to worry about people being added to the wrong security definition. For the optional associative security definition, you saw whenever Brenda was inviting Jim that she was able to check a box and add that user to the members group. Well, the way we did that was simply by typing in the word members here. Oops, if I type correctly. So if I type in the Wyeth members, now anytime Jim invites a user, there will be a checkbox for the members group. The administrative security definition, any security group that we place in this box will be able to, the user will be able to administer changes to. So for example, if I were to say Wyeth visitors and Wyeth members, what would happen is any time that Jim logs in, any person within the Wyeth visitors group or the Wyeth members group, Jim would be able to go in and make changes to name or email or password or telephone number. So Jim would have the authority to go in and make changes to those users, but only when we give them that permission. Not only that, but we can also set an expiration date for that, for the ability to be able to add users. So let's say, for example, that Brenda was going on vacation and we wanted Jim to be able to administer these accounts while Brenda is away. But when Brenda came back, we wanted to make sure that this permissions was taken away, but we don't want your IT staff to have to jump in and remember how to do that. They've got enough on their plate. So one thing we do is we just set the use expiration date, and we can just say, oh, Brenda's going to be out for a week. We'll just have her have Jim expire next week. But another thing you can do is you can actually make it very granular as to what kind of permissions he can have. So maybe we don't want Jim to be able to remove access. Maybe we don't want him to be able to edit accounts. Maybe we just want him to be able to send out invitations and maybe unlock accounts. So then you can uncheck what you don't want and then click on Save. So again, it's a very powerful tool. It allows you to customize the types of securities you want to be able to give. It will create a scenario where the proper governance is already baked in, and so that anytime that the user fills out a form or makes any type of changes, you as the admin has already gone in, created security policies and put them in place so that no one is being added to the wrong groups. Speaking of security policies, let's go ahead and go down here to our menu again. Let's take a look at our extranet settings. And we actually have an option for security policies. Now, since this site was created using our automation tool, ChangeBot, there was a security policy that was created inside of that request profile. But let's just say you wanted to add another one. So, for example, let's go ahead and just create a new security policy. And what a security policy is it's basically saying any user that meets this criteria, we want you to add them to this group automatically. So, for example, we know that any user who has a domain name of @wyeth.com, so we'll go ahead and type that in, domain name of @wyeth.com. Oops, wrong button. Automatically needs to go into the visitors group for say. So once we save that, now any user that has sent out an invitation and registers with an @wyeth.com, they will automatically be added to this security group of Wyeth visitors. So you can see how you can set up these security policies and put them in place so that your users are never added to the wrong group. You always have control of what users are being added where. And the great thing is this is all, you can automate all of this so that your IT staff does not have to have human intervention. If we go back to site settings, just a few more quick things I want to show you. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to go ahead and fill out the questions while we go through the rest of this. Registration settings. So we saw that whenever Jim went to register, that we've had different forms, different fields for them to fill out. Here where we can go and make changes to those. So if we wanted to add a registration field, we could simply click the Add Registration field. Once we fill it all, actually I'll go ahead and show you that. I think we got a little bit of time left. If you wanted to make it a choice box, you could. You can make it just a simple description. Maybe you want to add a CAPTCHA to the field. You're more than welcome to. And again, you can validate. You use a validation expression so that if you were to say, let's say it was a text box for zip code. Well, if you wanted it to meet a certain criteria, you could just do a validation expression so they can only enter in the correct type of text. Another important one that I really want to show you before we run out of time is the Add New Domain Name policy. So, for example, if we know that the only people that are going to gain access to this site collection through registration is people with a Wyeth address, we simply include that. So just use @wyeth.com. And then we'll do an inclusion. So we know that any person who wants to register for this site collection, their registration form has to include @wyeth.com. Conversely, if you knew, well, actually it could be several different ones, but we know for a fact we do not want any Yahoo accounts. Well, you can just do an exclusion, and then you just type in @yahoo.com. Once you click on Save, then you'll have a domain name policy. And that domain name policy is going to show you that anyone with @yahoo.com, if they try to register, they will not be able to register for the site. And we'll go back to site settings. And we mentioned that the mail settings, so that anytime you send out emails, if you want to change the way those emails look, this is where you can come out there and make that change. You just create a custom template. And then you can apply that custom template by simply clicking on the email that you want to change and then telling it to use that custom template. Another thing you can do is say, there's too many emails that are going out. We don't want to send out the registration denied email. We'll just hit suppress on it. And you can also change who that mail message is coming from, so that if you need to make sure that the end user is unchecking or is checking their email, then they can just make the current user so that the email comes from someone that they know and trust. Again, this is a lot of information. I try to condense it down into a short presentation. Hopefully I didn't do it too bad of justice. Let's go, oops, wrong button. And let's go back to site settings, make sure I've covered everything. And again, if you have any questions, please go ahead and fill those out now. No, that's everything that I wanted to show you for right now. Again, if you saw anything that piqued your interest and you want to know more, feel free to reach out to me. I can do a one-on-one demo if you like, or we can, if you have a question, maybe if we have enough time, I can go through how you would set that up in this scenario. So Jeff, if you would, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you for now, and then we'll look forward to your questions.
All right. All right, great. Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was a great demo. I thought you pointed out some of the key features that really make SharePoint as an extranet, along with Extranet Collaboration Manager, a great platform for a professional service firm to use as a client extranet, or really as any type of organization that is looking for to collaborate with their customers and have a secure extranet site for each customer that they can use in that collaboration. Well, just one more slide here, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. Usually people have a question about licensing. How is the product licensed? How is it priced? And EXCM is available either as perpetual software or as an annual subscription. It is on-premises software at this point, works with SharePoint Server and SharePoint Foundation as well. And the exact pricing depends on really the size of your SharePoint farm. As you know, depending on your organization and your volumes, different organizations choose to deploy different size farms. And it also, the pricing depends on whether you're interested in the standard features or the professional features. To give you just a easy example of pricing, if you had a single server farm and you wanted to do perpetual licensing, the cost would be $5,800 US dollars for a license for EXCM for that farm. We do offer annual support agreements, and those are required for the first year, and most of our customers choose to renew them because with an annual support agreement, you've got us here backing you up, making sure that if you run into snags anywhere, we can help you troubleshoot and keep the system up and running. On average, our support contracts are around 25% of licensing costs. So, for instance, for that $5,800 perpetual license for a single server farm, the annual support agreement would be right around $1,450 US dollars. And if you'd like a quote for your specific environment, just let us know and we'll be happy to work with you. So now I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. And if anything that we talked about seemed confusing to you, or something that you had on your mind coming into the presentation, if you would go ahead and type that into the questions box, we'd be glad to take a stab at answering that. I see one question. John is asking, talked about early in the presentation about security, and how do we make sure that client A does not ever see any documents or content for client B. In certain scenarios, maybe our client A and our client B happen to be in the same industry. Maybe they happen to be competitors, and we're a law firm or accounting firm, and we're known for being good at serving a particular industry, and we happen to have two clients and they're competitors. We certainly wouldn't want them to be able to ever see each other's information, and we may not really want them to even know that that we have both client A and client B. So that's a great question, John, and there's some features that we covered, but I can draw them out here that really help with that. Number one is we really recommend using site collections, because with SharePoint site collections, you have a natural security boundary. And that's part of the benefit of EXCM because it has a built-in site request and provisioning engine. So what you can do, and what Jonathan showed in the demo, is that you can set the provisioning profile up to provision a site collection for each of your clients, and that gives you this natural security boundary, and because you really can't see content across site collections. Another feature that is important in this regard was one of the last things Jonathan showed you, which was domain name policies. So in his example, in his case, if he had entered wyeth.com as an inclusion policy for the extranet site that was created, then what that would have meant is that if our client also happens to be Merck, for instance, another large pharma, we couldn't inadvertently send an invitation to a Merck user and have them register for the site and inadvertently see Wyeth's information. So there's several features in there that help you in that scenario. So great question, and hope that did a sufficient job answering it. Let's see who else we have here. Let's see, Dean asked, does the standard offering for $5,800 include storage, OneDrive, or 365 licenses? Well, this product in the demo that we showed you is for SharePoint on premises. So it does not work in Office 365. It's an on-premises product, and so if you're targeting an Office 365 extranet, then unfortunately we wouldn't be able to help you. And one thing to note is that Microsoft has really emphasized that Office 365 might be suitable for partner extranets, but I don't think you'll find any marketing from them to talk about Office 365 being used for customer or client extranets. And one of the reasons is, if there's anything that's super important, super sensitive, and needs a high level of privacy and confidentiality, it's content that you're sharing with your clients and customers. And I'm not so sure at this point that Office 365 has the feature set to ensure that you can guarantee the level of privacy and confidentiality that you can if you use SharePoint on premises and use it as your client extranet. A lot of these things that we showed you, you're just simply not going to have available in an Office 365 extranet environment. So great question there. If anybody else has any other questions, would encourage you to go ahead and type them in the queue there.
Jeff, would it be possible to speak on whether or not licenses are needed for your external users for SharePoint as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jonathan. Good news is that in SharePoint Server and SharePoint's Foundation, Microsoft has said that you get unlimited external user licenses. So there's no additional licensing to pay to Microsoft to use your current SharePoint environment in this way. Another question that Jenny has asked is, SharePoint is kind of notorious for being, on-premises SharePoint's notorious for being technically complex to set up and get everything configured properly. And she's asking how complex it will be to set this up. The good news here is that in the past year we've done a lot of work in our product, Extranet Collaboration Manager, which is just an add-in to SharePoint, to add wizards to set up your initial extranet environment. So it plugs into central administration, and you've got an extranet setup wizard there that's really very simple to use, and it goes through and makes all the edits to your web config files. If you're a SharePoint admin, you know what that is. And your web config files are what have to be changed to allow external forms-based users to log in and to use a SQL database as their account store. So a lot simpler to do this now with EXCM 2013 R2, and of course we've got EXCM 2016 out there on the market now as well. Well, it looks like that's all the questions, and looks like we're right on time to finish within an hour. And I just want to say thank you. Let's see, we've got a slide with our contact information here. You can certainly visit us at our website at www.premierpointsolutions.com, or you could email me, Jeff, at premierpointsolutions.com, or Jonathan at premierpointsolutions.com if you have a follow-up question later. And of course, you can always call us. So thank you very much for attending. We enjoyed presenting to you today, and hope you have a great rest of the week and weekend. Take care.